It's a Final Word Daily. Adam Collins and Bharat Sundaresan. 2 days out from the fourth Test match here at Ahmedabad at Modi Stadium. Our first impressions, both of us the first time at this mighty stadium, 130,000 capacity, well, allegedly at least, maybe 110. We're not entirely sure about that. What we are sure, Baz, is that it's been an incredibly busy morning, from the two pitches that have been prepared behind us to the sight screen image of the two Prime Ministers to Anthony Albanese overlooking the nets with another image that we've seen today. As we discussed yesterday on the pod, Jeff and I, it's very much a Test match, but also there is a political layer to this as well.
Oh, very much so. Just looking around the ground, you would think it's a cricket match being played during a political rally. Just based purely on the number of pictures and mentions of not just Narendra Modi, the Indian Prime Minister, but also Anthony Albanese. There are so many pictures of both of them together. You'll see on the back or in the background on the pavilion side. And you're right. Our first impressions of this ground, it's big. It is really big. I've seen it on TV before, and as I've told you before, the last competitive cricket match played on this ground was not the game in 2012. It was in 2015 when West Zone or South Zone beat our West Zone team in the Journalists All-Nationals tournament, and after that they decided to break it down.
So this is a ground with a lot of history as well, before the new ground, but the old ground. It's where Kapil Dev broke the world record back in 1994. That was against Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
It's where he took his 9 for 30-something against the Windies a decade before that, when he was a young tyro on the way through, not long after India had won the 1983 World Cup. Jiteshwar Pujara made a double ton at the old Ahmedabad ground, so the same place, but before the renovation in 2012 against India. So against England rather. So yeah. England played here in 2021. Before that, it was in 2012 as well, where Border-Gavaskar broke the all-time. Oh no, he passed 10,000 runs here, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. In 1987, he did. Against Pakistan, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And there have been a lot of milestones that have been achieved on this ground, but historically it's been a pitch, it's been a ground where Test matches have played out slowly. Before the Narendra Modi Stadium came along and things started hastening, like in those two tests against England, but long attritional cricket and Test matches would go into the fifth day. As Daniel Vittori said the other day, the opposition would make 400, India would make 600, and then it was just about hanging on in the second innings. And New Zealand did that successfully on 2 occasions.
Yep.
So they showed how it can be done back in the day. But here we don't know. Like you said, 2 pitches have been covered. I thought maybe 2 prime ministers or 2 pitches, they get to pick which one they want their team to play on. But I think it is the Indian team management who will have the final say. It looks like the pitch to your left, which looks more like a test pitch, or one that is ready to host a test match in 2 days' time, will be the one picked. But that would mean they have a massive boundary on
Huge.
one side as well.
Yeah, it's very unusual. It's hard to probably depict from our angle here, but the pitch over my left shoulder here is a long way over. They'll have to probably eliminate 2 bays of seating for an extra sight screen, which is really unusual. We often rock up at Test cricket and it's either, well, most of the time it's the pitch bang in the middle, or one either side. Having one over that's, well, if dead middle's where we are, that's 5 pitches over. That's very unusual. And the other one they've prepared is far greener. So when the Australians rocked up for training this morning, they went to that pitch thinking, well, that must be it. Then they saw a second pitch getting watered and rolled. They took a look at that one as well. So Rohit Sharma did say if they won it indoor, they would commission a green top for Ahmedabad. So maybe they prepared 2 pitches for both eventualities in terms of what was happening last week in the 3rd Test match.
Just keeping their options open, or maybe Rohit Sharma thinks, look, whatever happens in this Test match, maybe they're not backing Sri Lanka to beat New Zealand twice, and they're saying we'll just give them a green top and play.
Imagine that.
Imagine that if that were to be the plan. But that's what, that was all up for discussion till maybe 15-20 minutes ago, but now it looks like they've decided upon the pitch. Most of the Indian support staff and some of the senior players as well as Pujara walk up and down. It was the other pitch that we spoke about to that side, which looks like it'll be used. But there's other quirks about this ground as well, Adam. The one thing that caught my eye immediately as I walked in was the long staircase up to the dressing room on the other end. So
it's like Johannesburg.
It is, but maybe even longer.
Yeah.
So if you get out, and especially if you get out playing a shot you didn't want to play, you have a lot of time to think about it, admonish yourself and review your dismissal before you even get to the dressing room.
We joked with Todd Murphy about that this morning. He's been struggling, it's fair to say, the youngster, with the bat at Test level. But yeah, it's just like it was when, well, what I think about with Johannesburg at the Bullring and that long and that long runway back up to the dressing rooms is Merv Hughes smashing it with a bat back in 1994, or Ben Stokes swearing at someone a couple of years ago as well, just before the pandemic. So England did play 2 test matches here that sped up. The first was all over in 130 overs inside 2 days, and the second was complete inside 2.5 days, with Rishabh Pant making that extraordinary century. I think he got to 100, flicking Jimmy Anderson over the slips against the second new ball, something absurd like that. Unfortunately, Rishabh's not available at the moment. That gets a sense of the way the ground's played more recently. 101,000 people were here for the IPL final last year, where Gujarat won at their home ground. But yeah, historically, India haven't done particularly well here. Their win rate here, including the 2 wins over England, is 42%. That's a little bit down on the other grounds we've been, where India, especially in the last 20 years, have dominated.
And it goes back to what we were talking about, the pitches having been very dry and slow. It's red soil pitches here. So historically, you would think that the spinners would come into play as the test match progresses, but that hasn't been the case. It's been a long grind for even the spin bowlers, even the Indian spinners. I was looking at Dan Vittori's numbers. He spoke to us the other day. In 3 test matches, I think he's bowled 214 overs with just 34 maidens.
He averages 45 here, but I think he's got the 3rd most wickets ever or something like that.
Those are very good numbers for a spinner coming from overseas and bowling in these countries, or what used to be the Motera. Now it is the Narendra Modi Stadium. And we spoke about the curators, we spoke about people just working around the ground, being busy. But it's been a busy morning for everyone. The carpenters have been busy putting up these boards. And we also saw the chariot ride that will be played out, being rehearsed around the ground, didn't we?
That was, I neglected to mention that off the top. So for our Australian listeners and viewers who may not necessarily be across what's going on here, Anthony Albanese comes for about an hour. And from what we can tell from the rehearsal this morning, they're putting them in the back of a golden mini Nissan Hilux, kind of like a Pope-mobile, but without the covering, where the 2 Prime Ministers will stand up and be taken around the ground like they're on the back of a sedan chair or something like that, albeit one on wheels. And they'll get round to the far end of the ground, to where we are here, the pavilion end of the ground, where it looks like they're making something of a stage here. So there'll be the full production. We have to get to the ground at 6:30 on morning 1, as all the journalists and media, 3 hours before the first ball is bowled due to the security. They're expecting 85,000 people to come in purely for that presentation. So I'm not sure how many people will be at the ground to watch regardless. We said yesterday that the Australians and the fans who are here are going to be able to obtain tickets, but they in all probability could be up to 100,000 people here on day 1 if they meet expectations, and that would break the world record for Test cricket, which was set on 2013 at Boxing Day at the MCG. And speaking of the G, Brad, I'm getting a lot of a lot of questions on Twitter and the replies and that kind of thing, saying, well, this must be better than the MCG, your home ground. Well, given for lots of reasons, but this is Visit Melbourne, Visit Victoria on this podcast. How could we ever say something like that? That would be blasphemous. And also, it wouldn't be true. This might be a bigger stadium, and it's super impressive. All the mod cons. Even if it does strike me as a bit odd that there's only 2 tiers to it, I reckon that it is quite striking how far back the seats go, both on the bottom deck and the top deck. The difference at the MCG and other stadiums like this is they have a middle level, so the amenities, and it'll be busy at lunch for the toilet, I'm tipping, at either level, because there aren't those 3rd and 4th levels to go into. But the difference with the G is that it's been there for, 150 years. You can make a bigger stadium than the G, but you can't win that history that is iconic through the game. So super impressive, but let's not get carried away.
In India, bigger is better. It always is. That's how we've always dealt with everything in life. So I'm not surprised that when they wanted to build a really impressive stadium here in Ahmedabad, and also because it is the hometown of our current Prime Minister, and at that point maybe they weren't aware it was going to be named after him. It was named after him on the morning of that test.
Yes.
If you remember, that's how it played out. But you always knew it was going to be bigger. It was going to be, MCG can hold 100,000, we'll give you 101,000. And
I love that at either end there's competing numbers, 110 or 130, but the MCG always in and around that 100 mark on grand final day.
And another thing I can notice around the ground is a lot of places where there's no shade for the fans. And one thing we have to talk about, it is brutally hot. It's still the first week of March, but already temperatures touching 37, 38 degrees. So we'll talk a lot about the pitch as the match goes on. We've spoken a lot about pitches during the series, but the conditions here, the heat is going to be quite a challenge for the Australians. A couple of Indian journalists have already started talking about someone's going to do a Dean Jones here. If someone makes a double 100, we could see him really have a tough time out there.
Well, it'll be one of the same 11 playing this week as last week, if that were to be the case. It's very unlikely from what we've seen at training this morning and just generally speaking, the energy around the group, that they would move away from a winning formula. Never change a winning team, as they say in Australia around Test circles. But for India, there could be some amendments to the side that lost at Indore last week, remembering that they do need to win this Test match to guarantee passage to the World Test Championship final.
Yeah, the only change I can see might come in the place of Kakar, come in with Mohammad Shami maybe replacing one of the two seamers. Mohammad Siraj has been really impressive, but they have spoken about rotation, and you'd back India to want Mohammad Siraj for the World Test Championship final, which would be the next Test match they play. And quietly, I think they are confident, but Rahul Dravid is not the kind of guy who likes to give anything away or even talk about what might happen or the World Test Championship final. I remember bumping into him before India's final game of the T20 World Cup against Zimbabwe at that one cafe in Adelaide, which I won't name, where everyone is always there. You know which one I'm talking about. And I said, "Oh, great! I'll see you for the semi-final." And he's like, "What do you mean?" I said, "You just have one more match to win." I was like, "Oh, that's not how it works. That's not how it works. You've seen more cricket than I have. That's not how it works." I was like, "I'm sorry, not undermining Zimbabwe, but you would beat Zimbabwe at the MCG." Which they did, but that's Rahul Dravid in a nutshell. So he won't be thinking too far ahead, but I think quietly they know, they're confident they should get there to the Oval, which means they would want all their fast bowlers fit. With Jasprit Bumrah ruled out and Mohammad Siraj having played 3 Test matches and the conditions being as brutal as they are, I do expect Mohammad Shami coming back in for Siraj. The batting, I mean, look, you brought Shubman Gill in, so I don't see them moving on from him. The only other change, possibly maybe KS Bharat, break my heart, but he has struggled with the bat like a lot of guys have.
Ishan, Kishan, get him in here. That'd be fun.
Yeah, don't scream that too. I don't want my namesake to be upset, but he's kept well. He did struggle in the last Test match briefly in the first innings, so there might be some pressure on him, but I don't see them moving away from him with just one more Test match to go in the series.
All right, it is hot out here, so we're going to go inside rather, to the air-conditioned box before we leave here, and then tomorrow we'll hear from the 2 captains and we'll know the final 11s, and we'll be able to tell you more in the build-up to the 4th Test match here at Ahmedabad at Modi Stadium between India and Australia. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe. Tell your friends. We'll be making a daily show all throughout the 4th Test match between myself and Bharat, Jeff Lemon, Daniel Norcross, all for Visit Melbourne and Visit Victoria. Learn about them and plan your Melbourne and your Victorian visit. MCG, Modi Stadium. You know, we'll keep talking about that throughout the course of the next 5 or 6 days as well. Okay, upstairs we go. Bye now.